Social commentary is a prevalent theme in AP art history. It comes up in the form of the artist who makes an artwork in a way to deliver a message to the audience, usually about some sort of social issues that they want to speak out against. This theme usually comes up in units 3, 4, and 10 because it started in the 18th century. The first piece is from Unit 3. It's Spaniard and Indian produce a mestizo, which is attributed to Juan Rodriguez Juarez, circa 1715's Common Era, oil on canvas. Cast-up paintings similar to this were created after Europeans settled down in the Americas. Inside their colonies, and many Europeans mixed with indigenous people with birthed mixed children. His painting is similar to other cast-up paintings of the time, which depict a white or Spaniard man with an indigenous woman and their mestizo children. These cast-up paintings were typically created in a set of 16, which shows progressively more mixing as each piece went on. It also expresses the idea that your social status was more elevated if you were more European. These paintings were a social commentary because it reflects increasing anxiety in pure European elites about inter-ethnic mixing in the Americas. The next piece I have is also from Unit 3, and it's the Tete a Tete from Marriage à la Mode by William Hogarth, 1743 Common Era, oil on canvas. During this time, many aristocratic families partaked in arranging marriages for their children in hopes of upward social mobility. This piece is representative of social commentary in the 18th century, as artist William Hogarth paints this series as a commentary against arranged marriages. Throughout the series of paintings, it illustrates a story between an arranged couple who are used as pawns in their father's plans to gain a higher social status. In the Tete a Tete, it portrays a young couple who have obviously engaged in affairs with other people, which you can see with how the woman looks disheveled as well as the man who looks like he just came home from a long night. And as the story progresses, it becomes obvious that this arranged marriage is doomed for failure, and it results in the death of both the young girl and gentleman. Hogarth speaks out and exposes the social norm of arranged marriages by satirizing the upper class's tendency to be shallow and only care for money and status. The next piece I have is from Unit 4, and it's The Migration of the Negro, panel numbered 49 by Jacob Lawrence, 1940 to 1941 Common Era. It is a case in tempera on hardboard from the Harlem Renaissance. The Migration of the Negro is an example of a social commentary piece because it depicts the issues faced by African Americans of the time. As African Americans moved up north in search for better opportunities, they faced another issue of segregation. It shows how although they have overcome one social struggle, the fight for equal rights was not over. Instead, they face another type of discrimination through the Jim Crow laws that enforce segregation throughout their community and everywhere, and it just forces African Americans to be in separate spheres from white people. There's also a clear difference in the social status between the white and black people just from the attire they are worn. And this shows a distinct discrimination in the available job opportunities, as the different attire usually reflects the place that they have in society. It highlights the fact that African Americans face social prejudice or discrimination no matter if they were in the North or the South. The next piece I have is from Unit 4, and it is the Maryland Diptych by Andy Warhol, made in 1962 Common Era. It is oil, acrylic, and silkscreen enamel on canvas. And this art piece displays 50 repeated images of Marilyn Monroe, with half of the prints being in black and white and the other half being in color. And in the Maryland Diptych, Warhol comments on the increasing role that mass media and consumption plays in daily life. He comments on the obsession with celebrities such as Marilyn Monroe, who was one of the biggest well-known celebrities of the time, and that obsession with celebrities such as her was only intensified with the spread of mass media. Warhol does this by creating a piece that closely resembles diptychs from Christian art, which usually represent usually tell the story of Jesus, and by making Marilyn Monroe the focus of this diptych, he compares the people's worship and obsession with celebrities to the way that Jesus was worshipped as a religious figure. The next piece I chose was also from Unit 4, and it is Narcissus Garden by Yayoi Kusama, and it's an original installation and performance, 1966 Common Era, made from mirror balls. And Kusama's Narcissus Garden is an immersive installation that has been placed in many locations all over the world. It uses thousands of mirror balls that reflect a person's image onto it when they try to look at it. Kusama's Narcissus Garden is a social commentary because it invites the audience to an immersive experience where the viewer is forced to confront his and her or her own vanity, and through the use of thousands of mirror balls, the person's desire to see their own reflection confronts the elevated ego and vanity of people. Like, for example, if people were trying to take a photo of themselves, the action of taking the photo gets reflected onto themselves, and they see that they are being narcissistic, basically. And it comments on how each person is inherently narcissistic in some way, which is reflected through a person's reflection in the mirror balls. The next piece I have is from Unit 10, and it is Rebellious Silence from the Women of Allah series by Shirin Neshat. And it is a photo by Cynthia Preston, 1994 Common Era, and it is an ink on photograph. Neshat's Rebellious Silence from the Women of Allah series comments on the struggle of women to gain rights in Iran. The central figure is a veiled Muslim woman, which represents the oppression faced by Muslim women after the Iranian Revolution. Prior to the Iranian Revolution, women were not required to wear veils, but afterwards they made it mandatory, which represents the suppression of women in Iran. And the intense gaze of the woman, as well as the gun that is vertical, acts as a symbol of women speaking out against the social norm of submission, and it represents the fight for equal women's rights. And this work is a social commentary because it represents the fight for women's rights not only in Iran but as well as globally. The next piece I have is also in Unit 10, and it is Shibboleth by Doris Salcedo, and it was an installation from 2007 and 2008. And the Shibboleth is an installation that features a crack in the floor of the Tate Modern that represents the socio-political issues associated with immigration. The word Shibboleth is one that distinguishes people that belong from those who don't, and the crack represents the separation, racial differences, and experiences in immigrants. This work is a social commentary because it comments on these issues by having the viewer feel separation firsthand. After the installation was finished, the permanent scarring of the seal crack represents the healing process of immigrants from these experiences. It represents how that even though these issues are fixed, the scars that it holds remains forever, and it's marked by all of these experiences by immigrants. The Shibboleth provides commentary on the experiences of immigrants from Europe from developing countries. The next piece is also from Unit 10, and it is En la barberia no se llora, No Crying Aloud in the Barbershop by Pepin Osorio from 1994 Common Era, and it is a mixed media installation. This work challenges the definition of masculinity and specifically machismo present in many Latino American communities, and this is evident with the many masculine symbols throughout the installation, including barbershop chairs, car seats, sports, and other masculine symbols. And this piece was inspired by Osorio's first haircut, where he cried in the barber chair when barbershops typically represented manhood. And in this piece, it also explores the cultural identity, as there are many Puerto Rican symbols such as the flag and other cultural elements. Next is Pisupo Lua'afe, or Corned Beef 2000 by Michael Tuffrey. It is a piece made in 1994 Common Era, and it's made from mixed media, which you can see its labels from corned beef. In the Pacific Islands, pisupo was used to describe canned pea soup, which was the first canned soup canned food that was introduced there, and it is now used to describe all canned foods, including corned beef. In Pisupalua Afek, Tufri comments on the issues of ecological health and food sovereignty as a result of the introduction and consequently importance of corned beef in the Pacific Islands. Because the introduction of corned beef, traditional food production, as well as the economy and health of the Pacific Island people have been disrupted. This just shows how the people there relied heavily on corn foods instead of growing their own food, which was a result of trading and doing commerce with Western people who transported corn foods to the Pacific Islands. This work highlights and quantifies the reliance on corned beef as well as recycling the materials to reduce further waste, because the introduction of these canned foods into the Pacific Islands also created much more waste than was present before the introduction of these mass-produced foods. And finally, the last piece is also a Unit 10 piece, and it's Praying Mantra by Wangechi Mutu, and it was made in 2006 at Mixed Media on Mylar, and this piece is a social commentary piece because it criticizes the hypersexualization of African women and their body by men in the media. In addition, it also focuses on a cultural identity through the blending of Western and African culture in the piece, and it highlights a multicultural identity of many African people. Praying Mantra is a feminist and anti-colonial piece because it challenges the preconceived ideas of femininity and hypersexualization being simultaneous. Instead, Mutu attempts to redefine femininity by allowing women to redefine their own sexuality through the portrayal of a non-idealized form. This piece depicts African women differently than from typical media by portraying women in a form that isn't hypersexualized, but instead is more realistic and just portrays women to be real and not just a sexualized figure.